Welcome to the Dudeology Show, where real dudes discuss awesome stuff, killer gear, and cool stories. We're your hosts, Brandon Mosley and Chris Gambino. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and all the socials at Dudeology Show.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining this evening. We've got some great stuff for you today. But before that, please take a moment to click on the subscribe button on YouTube. It helps the Dudeology Show cause, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Chris. And in the studio today, we have Daniel Montero, Doctor of Sports Medicine at the Mayo Clinic and Fellow of the American Academy of Family Physicians. Danny, we're going to get into all kinds of awesome stuff as it relates to dude wellness. But before that, Chris, you were sharing a little bit of a story before the show. I think our listeners would love to hear it because it's kind of one of those just funny moments. And
yeah, I know we usually tell cool stories. This is kind of a uncool story for me, kind of a burn, and it hurts a little bit more because it came from an 8-year-old. But yeah, I was out to dinner the other day. We had my daughter. She's 8. We took her little friend out with us, and we were having a good time eating some burritos. And I'm sitting there, and my daughter's friend said, "Hey, Mr. Chris, you got man boobs." And I'm like, "What did you say?" And she said, "Yeah, man boobs." And I'm like, I immediately offended. I mean, a solid burn.
Absolutely.
By an 8-year-old, right? Until I asked that follow-up question, like, hey, again, I don't think I heard you right. What do you mean, man boobs? And then she said, well, that means you're fit. So I must have been wearing maybe a tight T-shirt. Then I immediately felt, back to square one, back to 100, But, man, the things these kids are learning these days, sometimes it's just kids say the darndest things, I think is what I'm getting at here.
Absolutely. So in a split second, though, based on the perception of an 8-year-old, so I'm hearing, so I'm understanding your self-esteem went down, plummeted, and then skyrocketed, all based on the comments of an 8-year-old.
All within 60 seconds.
Perfect.
Honestly, I've been thinking about it since it happened, and I'm a little self-conscious, but, I'm going to roll with it. I appreciate you getting me out to the gym yesterday to work on that. Because as you know, as you get into the late 30s, early 40s, if you don't work on that, you will have man boobs in the real sense. So, I'm feeling good, though.
Awesome. And I think we need to probably, an opportunity when she's over at the house again, is to explain to her the difference between man boobs and chesticles.
Yeah,
because I would have said chesticles, and now is that I don't know if that's the term. Is that the medical term for?
Not the medical term,
okay.
But
I'll tell you what. I'll let her dad explain that to her. Sure. She's not my daughter. I've explained it to my own daughter, who is also very fit gymnast. So, yeah, good stuff.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna maybe we'll get in. We've got some folks that have sent in some questions for you, Danny. But before we kind of get into the Q&A part, tell me a little bit. Just bring us up to speed. At what point in your life did you know that you were going to be a doctor?
That's kind of interesting, is because my dad's a physician, so he was a general surgeon, born and raised in the Philippines, and came over to the U.S. and his thought was to train here in the U.S., go back and be the town doc at home in the Philippines, but met my mom in the hospital on a blind date, fell in love, and stayed and lived the American dream. So growing up in a physician family, people always ask you to be a doctor like your dad. And the easy answer was always yes. Yeah. Didn't really think much of it until went on a medical mission with him back to the Philippines my senior year in high school. And it was kind of the first time for me to really meet family. True first cousins and uncles and aunts. In the Philippines, everyone's an aunt and an uncle, an auntie and an uncle and a cousin. But to truly meet my real family and the mission work we did there, working with my dad, seeing the poor, seeing the good he can do and in the medical field, kind of solidified, I think I want to do this. So I went pre-med undergrad and took my lumps my first few years, but persevered and was able to do it.
So back to your dad for a moment. It sounds like this is one of those just cool stories that you hear about people looking for opportunity, and he comes to America, and he's afforded that opportunity through his hard work. I'm sure it wasn't easy coming to America as to school, right? Being from a different country, especially medical school, it's general surgery as well. They met at, you said they met on a blind date in the hospital?
Yeah. So back in the 60s, there was a doctor shortage. So a lot of foreign medical graduates were invited to come and train with the hopes that many would stay, like my dad did. So again, his intention was to train in general surgery and then go back and be the local town doc. But my mom was working as an X-ray technician, and one of the house staff set him up on a blind date, and you know,
History from there.
History from there.
In what part of the country did you guys end up settling in, and did your dad end up opening up practice?
Well, he did his training in Norfolk, Virginia, and my mom is a Navy brat. My grandfather's last tour of duty was Norfolk, so that's where he retired and settled the family. So that was right after my mom had graduated from high school, actually in Milton High School in Pensacola, where he was prior. So they just happened to be there, so it just kind of worked out. So
That's
now
great.
I'm here in another Navy town. So
Yeah, you're in another Navy town, and you have some brothers, correct?
I do. 3 younger brothers.
Three younger brothers. Any other physicians? Any other medical?
Next one down is a lawyer. We still love him, but yes.
You got to have one in the family, though. You got to have one in the family.
Nice to have it in.
Speaking of lawyers, we might have Legal Bill on the show one day as well. So
we'll get legal. We'll get Legal Bill and Dr. Danny together on the show, and I think it could be like a recipe for disaster or awesomeness.
Lots of love there.
Either way.
Yeah. The next one down is a chef and restaurant owner. He and his wife have a nice family-owned restaurant in North Carolina, Elizabeth City. And then my youngest brother is a doctor, a general surgeon, so he followed more of my dad's footsteps in the surgery aspect. So it was interesting because even when I was thinking about in the 80s and early 90s, a lot of physicians were starting to get disheartened with medicine and were telling their kids, don't do it. But my father never discouraged us from pursuing medicine if we wanted. So
that's incredible. That's great. So you're doing your pre-med at University of Virginia.
Yes.
Cavaliers, correct? And then when do you start to, I guess, go down the path of sports medicine? How's that decision process?
Well, considering my athletic prowess wasn't good enough to get me on the field, I started doing some volunteer stuff in the training room. And I ended up doing sports medicine undergrad. Although I thought I was a sports medicine major until graduation, and it's in the School of Education, so I had other. Most of them were going to athletic training, some physical therapy. There were 2 of us went to medical school, and some went into teaching. And I remember I'm waiting for them to call sports medicine, and they say, "Okay, health and physical education over here," and my group starts moving over, and I'm like, "Wait, what? I'm a PE major, so I'm health and physical education. I was a bachelor's of science, and it was great because I was in the training room and learned some communication skills. You learned some basic skills with EMT and things that anatomy, physiology, nutrition, stuff that we had to do for sports medicine certainly carried over into medical school. I really had to kick it into gear after my second year. My grades weren't the greatest, and I remember going to speak with my pre-med advisor, and he's like, "So, how's it going?" And he's like, "So you want to be?" I said, he asked me, he's like, "You want to be a nurse?" I'm like, "No, sir. I want to go to medical school." And he's like, "Not with these grades."
Wow.
And I was like, "Son of a gun!" And I was upset and mad, but I thanked him 2 years later because that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
That your grades aren't good enough, and fortunately, I was able to kick it in gear and graduate with honors in sports medicine, and was fortunate to eventually get in.
Now, did you do any athletic training with the Cavaliers football team at all, or were you out on the field?
I was on the sideline.
Okay.
So training with them, no. Helping with some of their injuries, yes.
Do they have a football team?
They did. They did then. We were number 1 in the nation my second year.
Nice.
So,
nice.
Not for long, but I'll take it.
And what year was this when you were in school?
I was there 89 and 93.
Okay.
I was fortunate to stay a 5th year because I didn't get into school first time around. So I stayed and did some graduate work in exercise physiology, and was fortunate I got in that second time around. So. And
that's a grueler. You hear about folks trying to get into medical school, and there's MCATs, and there's all these other factors that go into play. And when you get that, I guess when you don't get in, what do you process? Because some people just walk away, and they're like, I guess I'm not meant to, quote unquote, meant to be a doctor. But you obviously didn't give up because it's what you wanted.
Yeah, and at that point, I couldn't see myself doing anything different. So, disappointed, bummed out. At the time, it was the highest amount of applications for medical school. So, it wasn't too surprising because, I wasn't top of the class. I didn't have necessarily the grades. I hadn't positioned myself to get in. So
this is really good stuff, right? I mean, we just talked to a Marine sniper who had to go to sniper school twice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got you applying for medical school twice, right? I think the theme is, hey, don't give up on your dream, right? You got to keep going forward and learning. You never fail unless you quit, right?
You got it. And I mentor a lot of pre-med students and others, and I'll share with them, look, these are my grades, these are my MCAT scores, and, you know, by all means, I shouldn't have got in medical school. I didn't finish top of my class, but I didn't finish bottom either. I finished, you know. Am I supposed to be in medical school? According to my numbers, maybe not. Am I supposed to be at Mayo Clinic? According to my numbers, Mayo not. Maybe not. I don't know. But the important thing is, no, it's not all grades. Mm-hmm. You need communication skills. You need empathy. There's a lot of other things you need to be a good physician. And now, certainly you have to have a minimum amount to show. I guess at some place they have to figure out how to screen and get through.
Well, do you have the actual capacity to do the job? Like the technical, like do you have the ability to learn the job? I think is a minimum, because you can want something all day long. If I want to be an NFL quarterback, you know, I can what is it? I can wish in one hand and spit in the next and see which one fills up. Eventually, there has to be a reckoning of, no matter how hard you do work, if you don't have that minimal kind of requirement or ability, it's almost like the intersection of talent and effort is where you want to be. And that's cool that you didn't give up. So you end up at, where do you end up for residency?
So I ended up at Eastern Virginia Medical School, which is in Norfolk, where I grew up. So that was nice, being the hometown where my dad was a physician. And by luck, was able to do family medicine here in Jacksonville at Mayo Clinic, Florida.
Nice. So there's your connection back to Mayo. And you were at Ohio State at one point?
Afterwards. And when I came down here, at that point, when I realized I'm not doing general surgery, I wanted to do primary care sports medicine. So typically it was family medicine and a fellowship in sports. That was the route I wanted to go. They were starting a sports medicine fellowship here in Florida. So I was hoping to be in that first class and maybe be the first fellow. Unfortunately, that got delayed a year, but it actually worked out well because the current director had ties to the director at Ohio State University. So I was very fortunate to have that and to help me get there. So I ended up doing my fellowship. So my 3 years in family medicine, and in that 1 year, I was there 2001 and 2002, Jim Tressel's first year.
So you were in a real football town.
I was in a different football town. Yeah, different league. It was a different league. I mean, it was, at the time, I think it was the largest athletic department. They had all 36 sanctioned sports, and the highest, I think back then it was like 70 million. It's probably like 140 million now, that the budget for sports. Yeah. But yeah, it was big time athletics.
In all that training, whether it was at Ohio State or at Mayo or Eastern Virginia, what's kind of one of the craziest things that you ever see? You hear the resident stories all the time, because you got to do all the jobs, right? As a resident, and you're doing hours, and you're sitting there grinding it out.
There's a lot of crazy stories. I remember in residency, it seemed like every time I flew somewhere, flying home after, there was always that, is there a doctor on the plane? I mean, it literally, at least 5 times I can think of. And, you know, you're like, oh, yeah. And then you go and you help out and see. And I had one lady 2 seats in front of me who were getting ready to take off, and she starts having a full-blown seizure. So then, you know, we go up, we stabilize her and talk to her. And apparently she has them almost every day. So, of course, they keep coming back. Doc, can we fly? Doc, can we go? And everyone's looking at me like, we want to fly. And I'm like, well,
so the pilots are asking you, someone who is not employed by the airline, who's a resident, to clear them if they can fly.
I don't think they realize I'm in my first year, second year of training. All they heard was MD. But
we're gonna have to ask legal Bill what the legal recourse is.
Well, and that's what's going through your head. I mean, there's different stuff out there, but what do you do in an emergency like that? Yeah. The reality is nowadays they actually have ER docs that are employed through the airlines, and they'll call and talk with them, and they'll go through whatever staff's on the plane feeding information. So someone else is actually making that decision nowadays. And it may have been that way then, but at the time you feel the weight of the world and everyone's looking at you like, I don't want to go back, I don't want to get delayed. But you know, she'd had it multiple times. She's like, I'm fine, this happens every day. And you know, I took her at word and we flew, and there's no other incident. So those are the kind of crazy things when I was flying. So I'm like, oh, every time we fly, I'm like, I need to review my basic CPR and other things here, but I've been fortunate, knock on wood, not to have a recent one. But the crazy stories tend to come out of whenever you're on call late night, where patients will sundown or have psychotic issues, and then you always hear secondhand stories when people rotate in the ER. It's amazing how many things people slip and fall on and get caught in the rectum.
Oh my!
I didn't see that one coming, by the way. So that's their story. They're always like, I was walking by this object and it happened to be.
It appears to be a similar story. They slipped in the bathroom. I was taking a bath, and I don't know how the light bulb or the flashlight happened to be there, but it's amazing.
I think we're going to have to reverse the video, play this twice, so people can really hear this.
Yes, he said rectum, by the way, in case you.
The technical term.
Technical term. When you look back at all that training and all the crazy stuff, would you change any of it?
Not a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we should learn from our mistakes in medicine. It's best to learn from other people's mistakes. So we have morbidity, mortality conferences on a regular basis. Hey, this case went wrong. What could we have done different? What could we have done better? And we are going to make mistakes. We're human. It happens. But it's just better to learn from somebody else's. I'm humble enough to know when to ask for help. I am fortunate. Teamwork is a big thing where I work, and never feel afraid to ask someone for help. Generally speaking, the doc that knows everything is the one that kind of scares me. Although I work with some people that appear to know everything, and they just amaze me and blow me away. But I know when to say when and when to ask for help. And in the end, it's all about the patient. Needs of the patient come first. That's the Mayo motto and what the Mayo brothers stood for. So if I don't know something, I'm no good for that patient. So I need to ask for help, and I'm fortunate I have a ton of people with experience around me that'll help us get there.
How often do people and patients come in and they think they already know it all because they've Googled it or they've gone on WebMD? And how does that make you feel as a doctor? I mean, this has got to be happening every day, right?
You go with it. I compete with Dr. Google every day. And in some ways, I'd rather have the patient interested, because they tend to be more motivated and more compliant, as opposed to, okay, Mr. So-and-so, I'm telling you for the fourth time, this is what you need to do. And people don't take your advice. I'm like, well, you can come back. I'll charge you. I'll tell you the same thing, and we'll keep, what's the definition of insanity?
Yeah.
Keep doing the same thing, getting the same outcome. So I'd rather have someone interested. And some of it you have to explain why you think they're wrong, or maybe it's not.
Right.
Sometimes it actually helps us. I mean, I have patients come in and say, Doc, I've been all over, and I think this is what's going on. I did my own research, and sometimes they're right. So.
That's great. I know every time I WebMD a symptom, it says I either have the common cold or cancer. Yeah. And I don't know which one. I mean, usually it's something in between neither of those, but...
Everything leads to cancer, Lyme disease, multiple sclerosis. I mean, all the bad things that you can think of. And if you have a patient with true anxiety, until you prove it or rule it out, it's going to stay up here. And it's important. You have to listen. And that's a big part of medicine. With all the technology and gadgets that we have, still the best medicine, the art of medicine, it's old school. This is still one of the best tools to listen. Because if you don't hear the patient, if they don't think they're being listened to, they don't feel loved, and they don't feel that empathy or that you care, the relationship's done.
Yeah, I was telling someone today, I think the best family physician I ever had still carried the old black bag, and he still kind of practiced a little bit of everything. And I'd come in and tell him sort of my symptoms and holistic story. And that was the best experience I've ever had with a doctor, because he'd listen really well. That was probably one of the key skills I noticed.
That's tough, because time is money.
Mm-hmm.
Money is time. But in medicine, I always preach, neither's any good without your health. So once you have that nice relationship with the patient, it's good. I look at the labs, I look at your vitals, and then hear a few symptoms. Then you get some social time with that. You build that relationship. Then when if he's complaining about a headache and you never complain about a headache, I'm listening. As opposed to if you have headaches all the time, okay, what's going on at home? What kind of stresses are you under? Those are important things that you don't get in an urgent care or an ER, and that's why it's important. Find a physician, find a provider that you're comfortable with, that you can have a relationship with. It makes it more efficient for both.
Mm-hmm. And how important is it, and I've always wondered this, when does ego come into play? If I come to you and you tell me I have one diagnosis, and I say I want to get a second opinion.
That's great. Yeah, from my standpoint, I never shy away from a second opinion. And when people say or ask about that, or they tell me they're coming for a second opinion, I'll just tell them that's great. You need reassurance. Go get a second opinion. Go get a third. Go get a second opinion. My expectations will tell you the same thing. If they don't, get a third. And then really whoever you're most comfortable with, it's not a sell job per se, but someone has to explain to you why they think you have what you have and what's the best.
You're not buying a car. This is your health. I mean, this is not a commodity that we're talking. It's longevity. You got to go to do residency, at the Mayo Clinic. You missed the fellowship by a year because they hadn't started it yet. You do your fellowship. Now you're back at the Mayo Clinic. What's your favorite part of what you're doing now?
Ooh. My favorite part, the teamwork that I have and the resources to me are always reassuring because, what I love about being at Mayo Clinic, again, it is, as soon as they walk in through the garage, I see needs of the patient come first.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a game. Who can take better care of the patient? So, and I mean that in a positive way. We want everyone to leave with a positive experience. We want people to have an answer, treatment options, and ways to get through. So, I'm fortunate in where I work in orthopedics. As I tell patients, I'm the quality guy. I'm not the quantity guy.
Mm-hmm.
The internal medicine docs, the cancer docs, they're the quantity people. They're keeping you alive and keeping you here for longer. But I'm the one that's supposed to keep you on the tennis court, keep you golfing, keep you exercising, keep you walking, letting you go to the beach. So I'm more of the pain guy.
Yeah.
When you take away pain, you make friends. When you keep people active and mobile,
True.
That's an easy way. You keep people mobile. And again, and as we age, it may not be playing golf and tennis, but it's just walking to get the newspaper, being able to stand and prep your favorite meal as opposed to having to sit down because you've got arthritic joints or injuries. So, preventing falls because that leads to so many other problems if they break a bone or, hit their head. So, that part as a quality guy, I don't face as much life and death situation as some of my other counterparts, and I'm glad they have that. And and maybe that's where I end up where I am. I'm not built for that. I don't know if I could do ER work all the time. I remember going through doing peds oncology. There's special people that do that. That's not me. So unfortunately, I found what I love, and they pay me for it. That's even better.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you get an opportunity because Mayo is a teaching hospital still, do you have an opportunity to interact with folks that were in your same position on the residency?
Almost every day. And I take that very seriously because I'm very thankful for the education that I had, and certainly feel very privileged that I have the opportunity to pass that on.
What kind of advice are you giving to like a hot shot young resident who's coming in, knows it all? What kind of advice are you giving that guy or girl?
Try to find sneaky ways of keeping them humble, because chances are they don't know it all. A lot of times, believe it or not, I'm not talking as much medicine as I am about life, because burnout is a really big problem now in medicine. So I'm asking, what are you doing outside of medicine? Do you have a significant other? Are you making time for them? Do you have your disability insurance? Do you have life insurance? Little things that I was fortunate to have one or two mentors that would talk to me about. It wasn't even about nephrology. I'm on my nephrology kidney rotation, and they're talking to me about are you putting money away, and you got your 401k. So I was always kind of taken aback, but I always remember those things. So those are kind of some of the pearls I'm trying to pass back. But life balance is key. And asking, what are your plans after this? Where do you want to be? Are you going to be close to family? And just really some indirect things that can affect their quality of life because the burnout issues are so difficult. I mean, there's a higher suicide rate amongst physician and medical providers. So it's not always about sports medicine and orthopedics. I certainly try to give those pearls. But because I always remind them too, have you seen this? Have you seen that? Have you heard of that? And they go, no. And I said, I bet it's seen you. And you'll never make the diagnosis if you never heard of it. So that we try to talk about some of the zebras, the less common things, and then we try to reinforce the horses, the common things that come in.
And I'm guessing the horses, because I'm dealing with it right now, are things like sciatica, low back issues.
Top 10.
I'm coming up, approaching 40, and man, it's a daily thing, right?
Back pain is a common thing that comes in the primary care office. We certainly see a lot in sports and orthopedics as well.
So we have some several of our listeners have sent in some questions for you, Danny. If you feel comfortable, we're gonna kind of transition to that piece of it. But before we do that, philosophically, the sports medicine department at the Mayo Clinic, if you could wrap up your practice, y'all's philosophy on treating patients, kind of just in a couple statements.
Well, we're treating athletes of all ages because there is no age aspect to an athlete. You can be a 5-year-old learning to swim. You can be a 95-year-old still in the pool and moving those joints. So, we stress exercise as medicine, and the whole idea is keeping people active. Again, it's a quality of life issue. And if your goal is to run a marathon, we'll get you there. If your goal is to simply walk for exercise, again, your goal is our goal, and it's about meeting those needs and being on the same page with our patients. Yeah,
and that's great. And I will speak, I guess, from experience. The Department of Sports Medicine over there at Mayo Clinic. I think you and I were having a conversation, and you said, we don't treat the picture, meaning we don't just look at an X-ray or an MRI or a test and say, okay, this automatically means that this patient. We treat the patient.
Correct.
And taking the time to sit and to listen. I think that's what you said is one of your biggest gifts, assets you have as a physician is listening to patients and listening what they want to do, how active they want to be, what they want to accomplish, what their ailments are, and tailoring the treatment towards that.
And being honest about it.
Yeah.
So,
and I'd like to bring up that point with men and dudes in general, right? We sometimes let our pride get in the way of being honest about what's really going on, right? Holistically, we might say, oh yeah, my back hurts, but you're not telling the doc about all the stress you've had at work because you've been burning yourself out for the last 3 months, right? That could be kind of causing that, right? And I think part of this holistic medicine and listening is first getting guys like us to talk.
Not always easy, but yes, important. But that's also part of the art of medicine. I have to somehow find a way for you to open up very quickly in a short amount of time. But that's the other thing I enjoy about where I work. We get quality time with patients.
Great, and we're going to get into some of those questions from our listeners. We got some really good action coming up for you, Danny. So we're going to give you just a brief moment to pause, catch your breath, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the show. Well, this is a portion of the show we're going to get into some awesome stuff. Danny has been kind enough to bring us some Intuition Ale Works John Boat Coastal Ale. Brandon and I are going to crack this open and ask Danny some more medical questions.
However, we are not going to let Dr. Montero crack his beer open until he is done answering his medical questions, because we want him to be sharp, and we will transition after that into some killer gear that he brought, and we'll let him partake in the John Boat Coastal Ale. Does that sound like a plan, Danny?
I'll stick with the coffee.
Yeah, let's crack these open.
Awesome, let's do that. Delicious. Okay, Danny, let's, from our listeners, what's the most common type of injuries you see from regular dudes? When I say regular dudes, let's think of guys in maybe their 30s, 40s, 50s, 35 to 55 age range.
Probably what I see the most are shoulder injuries, a lot of overuse. We call it shoulder impingement, and tendonitis, bursitis, and it's not uncommon after doing some yard work, the honey-do list, hanging decorations, things get sore, they just don't get better, and then they eventually come in. So not uncommon, especially if you're not fit and exercise on a regular basis. But even if you are, those are sometimes working out as they start to do a little extra or add a new routine or workout. They'll sometimes get the same injury. So shoulders, you see a lot of tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, again, pretty common based on what you're doing. I see a lot of that in January, February. So after Christmas, people are putting together Christmas presents and the dollhouse and the bike. And if you don't have power tools and you're not used to using that screwdriver, we'll see some of these injuries and they'll linger.
I've got a Christmas gift injury, right? Last year, I was putting together something for my daughter, and I ended up stepping on another toy, flying up in the air. And just last year, we got her this gymnastics bar, heavy duty, made of steel. I fly up in the air, land on it, and just slice my arm open. So Christmas can be dangerous, right? Especially when you've got a couple of kids, and dad's, supposed to be, basically playing Clark Griswold out there, making everybody cheery and happy on Christmas morning. So, little side story there.
Up on the ladder, hanging lights. Yeah.
Thankfully, the 8-year-old wants to be a doctor when she's older, so she didn't mind blood. She thought it was kind of cool. Daddy's sitting there shocked at what happened. But that's interesting. And we were just talking about yesterday shoulder injuries, right? When you have a shoulder injury, you can't do much. I mean, it just stinks, right? I mean, you can't do push-ups. There's a lot of things that you can't do. So,
I mean, running. If you think about that movement, I mean, tennis, surfing, like swimming. A lot of those things are. What would you say then? Is some good preventative measures for specific to the shoulder that dudes can take to make sure that those overuse injuries don't?
That's a great question. Yeah. Always a good warm up. We always stress warm up before you exercise, cool down when you're done. So a warm up can be simple jumping jacks, running in place, a little 5 minutes just to get your heart rate up. If you're getting your heart rate up, you're typically getting the body core temp up, and those are things that are going to increase blood flow to the muscles. And right away, you're going to have some increased flexibility. You never want to stretch a cold muscle. So if something hurts and you ice it and then go work out, you're more prone to injury. So a solid warm up is always a good idea.
Are you seeing, and I know I've seen a lot of this, people using bands these days to really kind of get the shoulder mobility and do a lot of warm up? Are you a proponent of?
Absolutely. Again, in fact, I brought a band as part of my some of my travel hacks. So yeah, a band can be great. You got to pick the right color, the right resistance, but not a bad warm up.
Yeah.
You see a lot of swimmers do it as part of their dry land warm up and exercise. So the bands can be very beneficial and a workout in and of itself.
I tell you what, this morning I did quite a few little baby arm circles. And when I say little baby arm circles, I'm talking this, but you do those enough times, it'll get the burn going. Lactic acid build up.
Yeah.
Try not putting your arms down, doing like 50 of those forward, 50 backwards. And
you do not need any weights whatsoever to get in great shape.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be creative in the things that you do. If it's I was coming down, I felt a sudden onset of pain, those are things that are more concerning for an actual tear. If there's a slip or a fall or an outstretched hand or others, those are the things that are more concerning for a tear that might require surgery, as opposed to I'm getting more and more sore. That might be more of an overuse injury.
Yeah.
And those tend to do okay with a little bit of underuse.
You know what I've been seeing a lot of in the last 10 years, maybe it's just me hearing more about it, the labrum tear. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So you've got the ball and you have the bony socket, and then the labrum just kind of makes that socket a little deeper for the ball to fit in there. And when you take that arm to an extreme, that can stretch and irritate the labrum. So we'll sometimes see it when someone, I'm more of a proponent for the bar than the dumbbell, because dumbbells can be great, but they'll take you to an extreme range of motion, and that's where we tend to see some of these injuries. You'll sometimes see it with your throwing athletes just because of the repetitive nature of what's happening. So, if you're in your 40s and 50s, to be honest, we don't have to repair those labrums that often. It's usually something that's kind of worn down over time. Again, unless there is a specific injury, those are things that we might repair. Your teens and 20-somethings and 30s, a labral tear, we'll often fix.
And you mentioned throwing motion. I mean, you got kids throwing curveballs at 10 years old in these year-round travel or whatever, and it doesn't have to be pitching in the shoulder. It could be overtraining. I know with my daughter, she's a competitive. She's 13. She's a competitive cheerleader, and during this kind of quarantine corona thing, whatever you want to call it, she was out of the gym, and she was still kind of doing these virtual training sessions. But she was so much of a better athlete through that because she was giving herself a break and not getting those overuse things. So the question is, what I guess philosophically as parents, how should we be managing kind of the overuse in these year-round sports that kids are in? Because what I don't want to do is set any of my kids off on the path of needing surgery in their 20s, especially for the small payoff of a chance that they're going to go pro. And this is probably just kind of something to level set with everyone. There's a very small chance that anyone's children are going to go play a professional sport that's going to be of any career kind of making thing, right? I mean, that's probably the reality of the world we live in. What's your advice to parents how to manage that?
That's a great question, and something that we deal with quite a bit, because even when I started in medicine, we've seen a change in sports. There's big money in sports, and even in the leagues, kids leagues. We got wiffle ball leagues for 3-year-olds. What the heck is that all about? So I mean, there are guidelines out there and recommendations about playing sport year-round, which is basically don't play year-round. The recommendations are to cross-train, play different sports. So you talk to a lot of the big-time athletes today, they'll tell you they played 4 different sports. They had different seasons. They were cross-training. They were staying in shape, but they weren't doing the same thing over and over and over again. So if you have kids playing baseball and throwing, I mean, recommendations are you need 2 months of a break to give that arm a rest, that you're not throwing all the time. But when you play on your school team and then your summer travel team, then you got fall ball, and then you're back in the spring, we're seeing a lot of overuse injuries the last 10 years that we didn't see when I first
so much
started.
pressure these days to be on the club team and the high school team, and it's almost getting more attention now on the club side of things, where they're just going year-round, travel ball, whether that be soccer, baseball, football, all this stuff. And I agree with you. When I was a kid growing up, same with you most likely, you're playing 3-4 different sports. You're playing the season, and then you're moving to the next sport. And I felt like that was good. There was less pressure. These days, these kids are under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure at such a young age, to be doing 3 games a week, and they still got to do school, their homework, and it just seems like a lot.
Now, it's ironic, if you took the money that you're doing with all these travel sports and the pitching coach and the hitting coach and your stretching coach and your strength coach and your nutritionist and your sports psych coach, and maybe you put that into a 401k, you might have enough money for college, as opposed to I got to get you a scholarship. You got to get a scholarship to play.
Good point.
Yeah, we're gonna have some money guys come on, and I think that would be an awesome scenario to say, hey, if this amount every year that we're dedicating towards travel, X whatever sport is, if I were to put this in something now, compound interest, what am I looking at in 10, 15, 20 years from now? Probably buying a second house.
You might break even. I mean, I've heard $10,000 a year to do travel teams.
Very common.
And I'm
Very
like,
common.
wow, if you put that away, maybe you could pay for school. It's unfortunate because, again, I'll see this a lot with students and with the athletes. So, I have to at times separate and, can I talk with your child alone? And then simply ask, are you still enjoying your sport?
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, but from time to time, no. Well, why are you still playing? Because I'm good and my parents think I can get a scholarship. And then you have to figure out that burnout part with the athlete. That's important.
I know my daughter being in gymnastics, they get to a certain level. She's not there yet, but then they start asking you to do some of that virtual school stuff where you're at the gym 5 hours a day and you're doing school a couple hours a day. But that's your life, and I feel like there's some decisions to be made there, right? To really think, is that really good for the child? I don't know yet.
And there are certain sports where you do specialize a little earlier. That's been shown, for those getting to the Olympics and when they peak.
Sure.
But for the majority of them,
I mean,
let a kid be a kid.
How many people are on the Olympic gymnastics team? 6, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Well, I got a buddy of mine who's comes from a coaching family, coached his entire life. Won't let his kids put football. Won't let his kids put pads on until they're in middle school. He's like, they need the basics, they need the agility, and if it's going to actually be, we'll cross that, but he's like, no pads. And his dad taught him the same thing. And these are guys that are coaching at a very, very, very high level, and I just thought it's an interesting philosophy. So what I'm hearing, though, is whether it's your kid throwing baseballs or playing volleyball or gymnastics, or whether it's 30, 40, 50-year-olds just trying to get after it and stay healthy, recovery sounds like one of the things, warm up and recovery, that are your 2 kind of keys to prevent overuse injuries.
All basics, and you have to kind of keep an eye on how you rev up your training regimen. So, and there are a lot of different programs where this is what we do in the off season, this is what we do during season for maintenance, this is what we do post season. So you're not losing. It's unfortunate because we decondition so quickly. We can decondition in 2 weeks. It takes 2 months to condition and get back up. So.
Yeah, how much time should one spend in any given week working on recovery? Let's move from kids to guys our age, 30s and 40s and 50s.
Not necessarily a set time. You just have to listen to your body. I mean, the recommendations for sport, for exercise, for all, is 150 minutes a week of aerobic activity, and then 2 days a week of strength training. So most will break that up 30 minutes, 5 days a week. So you're doing mild to moderate aerobic activity. You can actually get away by doing 60 minutes of vigorous, and a lot of times they'll do 20 minutes 3 times a week of high intense, heart rate's a little higher. That counts as your aerobic, and then a lot of times people forget the strength training part. So whether you're working out 5 days a week, and then you've got 2 days of strength training where you're not doing the aerobic part, there's some built-in time with that. Or if you do 3 hardcore workouts, so 1 every other day, it's not necessarily a set time, it's just to listen to your body. It's okay to be sore the next day. If you're sore 2 days later, 3 days later, that probably means you did too much. That means take it down a notch next time.
And I know, I've been seeing a lot about foam rolling, and I actually foam rolled yesterday for the first time in a long time. Felt really good. What are your thoughts on foam rolling?
I saw a recent article that mentioned there wasn't any necessarily great data that it works, but on the flip side of it, it's helping take away pain, which it does for some, or keeping things flexible. I think there can be some benefit there. It's unlikely to hurt yourself in doing it, so we have a lot of patients that will do so.
Yeah.
So, and I think it can be beneficial. If it's part of your warm up or your cool down, then again, that's also beneficial to have those habits in place.
Awesome.
We had a question that came in through one of our social media at Dudeology Show. What should a person with an Achilles injury avoid? What type of exercises, if someone's nursing an Achilles injury, should they not be doing?
Everything.
Everything.
So you hear about someone's Achilles.
So they should do a lot of arm circles. Is that what you're saying?
Upper body. People talk about that nagging injury in Achilles heel. I mean, that's just it's a difficult thing to treat because you stand every day, you walk every day, you're working that Achilles every day. So once that flares, that can be difficult to calm down. Generally speaking, you're going to want to avoid explosive jumping type of activities. So you could do a squat with your heel down, but if once you start, that might be a little better than actually doing a jumping jack. Anytime, again, you're pushing off and firing that Achilles, you're working it. So you can do some leg things, but you're going to want to try to keep it to the knees and the hips. Any jumping thing, anything explosive, you're putting yourself at risk for a little more injury. But that can take a while. Anytime you strain a muscle, anytime you break a bone, Mother Nature's got about a 6 to 8 week healing time. That doesn't mean you can't exercise during that time. That's where we get creative. That's the holy grail in sports medicine, is how do I keep you moving, but this rests and gets better, but we still keep you maintenance and exercising.
Yeah, I know. You hear a lot about micro tears in the Achilles, and is that something that'll heal, or is that going to turn into sort of arthritis or sort of a constant nagging pain?
It can heal if you give it the appropriate time. If I were to put you to sleep in beauty, and wake you up 6 weeks later, it's probably scarred in and healed, but now it's deconditioned. So then we still have to find a way to work it back up. If you jump back into your old routine, it's probably going to flare a lot easier. So generally speaking, avoid any type of explosive, weight-bearing type of things. And time, that's the toughest part, is being patient. Because once you start feeling better, you're tempted to get back in it, and then it's...
What are your thoughts on weekly stretching regimens? And I do a lot of stretching. I've done a lot of yoga as well. It certainly feels as though it's helping, but what's the professional's opinion on it?
Always great to be limber. So flexibility is a key part. We want flexibility, and then we want strength. So, and in that order. So if you're pretty tight and you're exercising in a limited range of motion, you're not going to get as much benefit, and you're setting yourself up for injury, as opposed to exercising in a full range. So a lot of back injuries can come from tight hamstrings, tight quads, tight hip girdle. So if you're not flexible, again, you're setting yourself up when you think about the mechanics of how the body moves. So flexibility is a great thing to be.
It's been said, I guess, everything's kind of connected, right?
Correct.
The hamstrings, the hips, the low back, the core, right? And I know men moving into their 30s, 40s, 50s, this is a question that came in from one of our listeners on social. Are there certain types of foods that we can eat, or maybe that we should avoid in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, that are going to keep us from kind of getting that, first of all, man boobs, going back to that, or that dad bod that is so coveted, I guess, these days, or not?
I'll start with everything in moderation. Again, in a healthy diet, there are no forbidden foods. It's how much and how often. So, the general recommendations are, minimal amounts of red meats. You've got cholesterol implications that go with that. Processed foods. So if you eat a lot of sandwiches and processed meats, again, there are a lot of preservative things that can be a part of that. your white flours and sugars. Those are all things that can be pro-inflammatory. That again, you really need to limit the amount in your diet as opposed to a complex carbohydrate and a balanced meal. We need fat in our diet, but you want healthy fats. We need protein in our diet, and we need carbohydrates. That lights the fuel for the fire for our workouts. So it can be different for different body types and different people. That's why we don't have one specific diet that seems to work for everyone. We'll have people that are running marathons that look obese, and you tweak their diet, and all of a sudden they start to lose weight, and vice versa. We got people in the gym that are working out all the time, and they're not losing weight until they add a little extra aerobic activity to it, or you tweak their diet. So everyone's different, and but the general things are, again, everything in moderation. Caution with the amount of red meats that you're doing. Sugars, simple sugars, be careful with that. That can be as simple as, don't drink carbonated or sweet drinks.
So many people drink their calories. It's and they just don't even think about it. I love that answer about everybody's different, because you got these magic pill diets out there, or follow my 10-week or 8-week cleanse and do this, and it's a lot of guys don't stick with it, right? They're on this sort of pogo, back and forth from losing a little weight really fast, and they gain it all right back. And I love the answer that we're all different. We need to figure out our own bodies. We need to do things in moderation. So that's what I try to follow. I'm not always as consistent as I'd like to be, but yeah.
And I think there's like a mental aspect to this, right? So if I'm looking at my hey, I'm going to eat this for breakfast. Well, if I look at it as I can't have all this stuff, that puts me in a mindset versus if I get up and say, I can eat all the lean protein and complex and brown rice and complex carbohydrates and vegetables I want, and fruit, then that's totally different than, I can't have that, right? So when you look at yourself, and it's a mindset, right? I'm going to go back to your story. You said, I'm going to be a physician. That is what I'm going to do, right? Not like, woe is me, I didn't make it in the first time. And I think we have to take that same approach to our fitness and to it's kind of a mental toughness piece. And I'll ask you that, like, what's the mental side of health? Because you deal with people who are you're telling them that, hey, you are sidelined because of an injury from a sport you love, or whatever news you're giving them. How do you approach that, I guess, from the mental side of things?
And that's a great question when we deal with athletes, because we got to figure out where are they in their recovery physically, but where are they mentally as well. A lot of athletes get very depressed when they have those injuries. A lot of this really just comes down to commitment. How committed are you to your goals? When it comes to diets, I'll ask people, hey, come back next week and write down for 3 days everything that you put in your mouth and ate. And you'd be amazed. 90% come back and they don't do it. And I just tell them, well, when you're ready, come back and see me, because if you can't even do this, you're not going to change your diet.
I can't want it for you. I can't want it more than you want it.
If you can't do this simple task, we're not there. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste your time. When you're ready and you're committed, we'll move forward and do something.
Knowledge is power. I think writing it down, tracking it in a fitness tracker is everything. And when you know what's going in your body, let's say you're getting that 600 calorie Starbucks drink, right? And you're like, that's like half the calories I gave, a third of the calories I'm supposed to have all day, and I think that knowledge really is power, but you have to want it, and you have to be disciplined, just like you would be with your fitness, right? But going back to the question on mental health, that's a huge area these days. And so talk about even, stress management and depression a little bit more, and how those can impact overall physical health.
Well, if you can do the basic 3, eat well, sleep well, and exercise, you're above the curve. Sleep is poor for many people, and when you don't sleep well, everything else kind of falls out. Your diet is an important aspect, because that can affect your weight and your mood. If you're doing a bunch of sugars and getting the highs and the lows with that can be tough. But exercise is medicine. And there's actually a website, exercisesmedicine.org. If you look at all the things that exercise can do for you, it's amazing, including depression, anxiety, your mood. If you're getting in shape, you're feeling better about yourself, having self-confidence. It's a great way to de-stress. It's better than this in terms of de-stress. Not that you can't have 1 or 2 of these, but if you can deal with your stressors in a positive way, like exercise, and you've got that commitment, again, a lot of other things start to fall into place because you have to make time to exercise. Yeah. That's a commitment. And you have to fit that in with other things. That's a commitment.
You know, when I learned that, and I've always exercised, but when I've learned that doing that exercise and doing it and going hard and doing it consistently, I kind of get that endorphin rush of I did something really hard today, early in the morning. I got up and I got that out of the way, and the rest of my day is generally just a much better and more positive, right? And when I don't work out, I tend to go grab for the high fat, high carb snacks, and it gets a little stressful in life, start to stress eat, and I can definitely see that. And I think a lot of guys, either overdo it when they're stressed out, but when you get out there and you've gotten after it for an hour early in the morning, you're feeling good, and you don't want to go ruin that by having a donut.
It's being on the path, right? When you're focused in on that mission, like you don't want to do things to torpedo that or to sabotage that. So it's got kind of having that like mental. I think that's where the mental piece, like the mental toughness. Like, am I going to say no to the things that aren't important so I can say yes to the things that are? To your point, is it health? Is it my fitness? Relationships, right? We got a question that came in here, kind of around like relationships, because I think those are that's really important of something that we invest in. We're probably right at, for all the listeners out there, I think we're right at like 52 minutes. So if you want to earmark this, if you want to go grab, if you have a significant other, a wife, a spouse, get them in the room for this part, because this is a great question around relationships and the physical benefits of relationships. How often should regular dudes be having sex? And healthy sex and healthy relationships.
Sex is healthy.
Well, can you say that one more time for all our listeners?
Sex is healthy.
Perfect.
Now, everything in moderation. Can you do too much of a good thing? Sure. But I'd say have as much sex as you and your spouse can comfortably have.
So at a minimum, several times a week.
You could say that.
Okay.
It's, I follow Happy Wife, Happy Life. So again, that is a relationship. That is a two-way street. So again, those are things you want to make sure you're on the same page and comfort. As we age, things can be different for both the male and the female. So those are things you have to be cognizant of and aware of. And a good relationship, you'll find ways to work through that.
And I think healthy communication too about it, right? I mean, women are built differently than men, right? So obviously.
That's another whole show that can be on that. But there are many, just like exercise, there are many benefits from a healthy sexual relationship.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. And I think relationships, I think guys, when we move outside of kind of maybe that intimate relationship and that one-on-one with a partner or spouse, someone you're committed to, but just, I feel like guys have this tendency sometimes to just go isolate themselves on an island. We go to work. We get to this like phase in life where we go to work, we come home. We may have some people we talk to at work. How important is kind of a dudes to have other dudes to brotherhood, camaraderie?
Relationships in general are always good. One of the keys to a longevity, a long life, is a significant other. So having a spouse or even a pet, something that you care for and you get something back in return, those are important aspects that you can't.
How crazy was that statistic with the COVID-19 stuff going on? All of the animal shelters were empty. People got pets to hang out with them while they're quarantined. It was really interesting. But
do you think they're going to fill back up now as we start?
I hope not.
I hope not. That'd be kind of a tragedy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I will tell you, my pet brings me a lot of joy. He's a great dog. Every dude should have a dog, by the way. Just general. But going back to men being with other men, and I think this is a great point that when you don't have that accountability in your life, or you don't have that camaraderie, and you're constantly just going through that routine of work and then coming home and needing to do the things at the house, it can cause you to be on this island, like you said, and almost into this sort of, I have a happy face on the outside, but on the inside I've got a little bit of emptiness. Again, maybe kind of deep dive a little further into relationships between dudes.
It's always nice to have a friend that you can share things with, because chances are you and I may have similar struggles at home. We may have similar struggles at work. and you may not feel comfortable sharing that with your spouse, or you may not feel they understand. Although I always encourage you to speak with your spouse on these things so you can improve those relationships. But sometimes, girls want to talk to girls, guys want to talk to guys. And it's nice when someone's in your shoes, has walked your walk, talked your talk, that you can share that with and experience with, and you may get some great advice back. And even just the accountability aspect, working out F3, knowing others are going to be there, that's an extra layer of responsibility, not just for me, but don't want to let down your friends that are waiting on you, expecting you to come. There's nice little levels of checks and balances that go with that.
Yeah, and if you didn't catch that, Danny's referring to F3 Nation, not a sponsor, but a great free workout program for men that we like to do here locally in North Florida, but they have them all over the country, so check them out at f3nation.com.
Well, Danny, listen, we appreciate you coming on, and we're going to have you on again to answer some more of these medical questions. And we appreciate what you're doing for what we like to call the movement, right? Which that means is what part of the mission of the Dudeology show is just get dudes just kind of amped up to get after it, whether it's in their relationships, whether it's in their fitness, whether it's a project, start a business, like any of that. And we do that by sharing our stories. And I think you have a phenomenal story. You have an amazing story. I want to come back on. I want to dig into more of your dad's story, because I think that just sounds cool. And we really appreciate all the advice. But I also know that that beer's getting warm. All right, and I don't want to do that to you. So we're going to transition now. We ask all of our guests to bring in what we like to call killer gear. So I know you brought some stuff to share with us today, and if it's okay, we're gonna let you crack that beer and share some killer gear.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was trying to think about what medical or what kind of things do I typically travel and do things with, and one of the simple things I was thinking about when I travel, especially now with COVID. Unfortunately, we're not traveling. It's kind of a teaser. Working out when you're on the road. You may not want to go into the gyms now in the hotel. I know there's different regulations and ways that they're cleaning it, but something that's not too heavy, easy to travel with. We talked about bands earlier. Just a simple band. Again, these come in different resistances. Usually the color will tell you how strong or how light it is, but you can pack this fairly light. It's not going to put you over your 50-pound weight. And you can do a bunch of different exercises, all kinds of things you can find online where you can get an arm workout. And you can always do your cardiovascular in your room without having to leave your own room and trouble. So you can go high tech and get a TRX that you can strap on the door and do things with, but just your rubber band therapies are a simple thing.
It looks like they have these on Amazon. Is that
absolutely
INTEY?
That's just one particular brand again.
And
dude, that's like legit, man. That's like what resistance is this? Like max? I don't know how to do it, man. When are you getting all yoked up? But
green is the lightest.
Okay, green is so you brought the green. This is the one you never use. The one you brought it.
See, still got dust on it. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you're packing that in your suitcase, taking it to hotels when you've got to travel.
Easy to travel with. Again, if you want to go a little higher tech, TRX is one that's straps that works. You can get them where they actually have bands on it to do, but just a simple thing in terms of staying in shape on the road. When you're actually traveling, one of the best presents I've ever gotten that I give all the time is a handheld weight scale. So this thing, I think it costs about $20. You literally turn it on. You grab your suitcase. Strap it on. So actually, this thing says 15 pounds.
There we go. Let's get it on the kettlebell.
Let's actually test it out.
For all you listeners out there, just listening on the podcast, Danny is wrapping a. Yeah, there it is. He's putting a suitcase weight around our kettlebell, so we'll see if it actually weighs 15 pounds. How's that working?
Maybe.
There we go.
There it is.
There it is. So we got 15.
So where are you using this? So do you pack a lot of stuff that you would maybe hit the limit and have to pay the extra baggage fee?
When I travel with my spouse and kids, I
Because when I travel, I'm like, man, it's like a contest. I'm like, how small of a bag can I get for just me, and how quick can I get through security?
Yeah.
That's the yin and the yang. When we're packing stuff in, this thing has saved me multiple times where I had to balance things in other ways.
I honestly, in the last year, I've been at the airport and had to unpack because my bag weighed 51, with the family, and we're moving stuff around, and we're looking like that sort of chaotic family. We may have left our kids somewhere,
And when they got this,
what brand is that?
This one looks like Balanza.
Okay,
is the name.
Probably on Amazon.
And when the check-in people see you do this, if you're a pound or two over, they're typically go. Yeah. They seem to be pretty.
The effort. If you're putting forward the effort, you have to advise.
And then it's more often than not, I should charge people behind me. Can I use that real quickly? Again, you make friends really quickly when you help keep them out.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to order that. That's on Amazon. It's the Balanza ergonomic digital luggage scale.
I give this to newlyweds.
Okay.
It's a great
going on a honeymoon.
It's a great stocking stuffer, and again, it's one of those things like my waffle maker I use all the time. It was the best wedding present I got, and the newlyweds I've given to, I get feedback. It's a lifesaver when you're traveling, going on a big vacation. So that part's always fun. When traveling, again, putting on my doctor's hat, there's all kinds of things that you want to try to take with you. You want something, in case you got a cough, anti-cough medicine over the counter. You want something for nausea. You want something for motion sickness. You want to take a pain reliever like a naproxen or ibuprofen. If you're traveling somewhere overseas and you're going to be more third world country, it's a good idea to talk with your doctor and get an antibiotic for traveler's diarrhea. You want anti-diarrhea medication. So a bunch of those little things.
They call Montezuma's revenge.
Yes, in many ways. So those are things that can be very beneficial. I've got all those little things with that. Since this is a Dudeology show, I had to bring on Dude wipes.
Dude wipes.
What is it? What is a Dude wipe?
So a Dude wipe would be a moist towelette.
Okay.
That you can use.
Does it smell like the outdoors though? Does it smell doodly?
Absolutely not. So. If you're traveling, you've got to go to the bathroom in the airplane, you're in the airport or someplace that run out of toilet paper, or it's that little thin stuff that falls apart in your hands. Nice to have.
I bet those were really nice to have during the COVID-19, quarantine. You've got stocked up. It looks like you brought some other Dude wipes here. Everybody's looking for toilet paper. He's ordering from Dude wipes.
So they're like diaper wipes. What are they for
men?
For dudes?
Yeah,
for dudes.
Hey, listen, man. I bet they're great. I haven't tried those, but
so at home and then for travel, they come in little kits.
And that's on dudeproducts.com, I believe. And they are not sponsored the show, but they've got some pretty cool stuff on their site. Outside of just the wipes, they've got a lot of neat stuff. So check them out at dudeproducts.com, which not a sponsor, but would be an excellent sponsor for the Dudeology show, in my opinion.
Yes, they would fit well within the movement. And, we'll have you guys on sometime.
And then the other thing that my wife actually got for me, trying to go away from certain chemicals, in hair products and in deodorant, Bravo Sierra has a bunch of different health products. And, this is aluminum-free deodorant. It actually doesn't smell bad. And it does a much better job than some of the other ones that I've tried that were chemical-free.
Is this company, Bravo Sierra, are they products geared just towards men, or are they?
I wouldn't necessarily say geared towards men, but it has a military background with that, where these are military-tested special forces, and they're giving back to some of the military nonprofit and charitable programs.
Yeah, so on their site, they talk about hygiene and safety essentials tested by military or members of the U.S. military, made in the USA, so that's great. And Danny, I think you had let me try one of their Bravo Sierra.
They've got a body wipe that they make, so I think we've got that there.
Yeah, so these are the Bravo Sierra body wipes. They come in this little casing here, and I tried one out. Antibacterial body wipe. It was great. It smelled good. Felt great. I did a workout this morning. It was a little bit rainy and muddy out there. Kind of wiped off afterward. Felt refreshed.
Yeah, and it's a fairly strong towelette. So again, you do the whole body.
It was. I don't know the exact sizing of this, but it was at least, about 12 inches by 12 inches, right?
Is that man inches or woman inches?
Manages.
How big was the fish?
All right.
So that's great stuff. So he's brought some really awesome stuff to the show, right? And as our logo states, the Dudeology show is about cool stories, killer gear, and awesome stuff. And today we've looked at and heard about all of that, right? We've got a great story here with Danny Montero with the Mayo Clinic, and he's also got a new shirt on, Montero Medical Mission, which you guys can check that out. We've talked about some awesome stuff and some killer gear. So I think we've hit on all three things today. So I appreciate it, Danny, for you coming on today. And got anything to wrap up?
No, that's it, man. Just listen. I think this has all been some good action, and so make sure that you send in those questions for next time. Make sure to check out all of our past episodes out on YouTube and hit the subscribe button. And thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Crack it open.
We'll do
Cheers.
that.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Support your locals.
Thanks for listening to The Dudeology Show, the place for cool stories, killer gear, and awesome stuff. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share on all your socials at Dudeology Show.